Big Week in Gaming, a podcast that dives into gaming news, analysis, and reviews. If you'd like to help contribute to the growth of this podcast and community, please leave us a 5-star review, as it helps people find us. With that said, let's get on with the show.
Shut up! Big Week's on the radio! Shut up! It's Gaming Podcast Audio!
Welcome. It's been a big week in gaming. I'm integot, he's Swinny for episode 6 on Sunday, the 23rd of August. This week we'll be discussing DC's FanDome announcements, Nintendo's Indie World Showcase, and Swinny's Swinpressions of the new Battletoads game. And before we kick off, I just want to plug that if you do want to help us grow this podcast, please ensure to put a 5-star review for the podcast. That's the best way for people to find us. With that, shameless shilling to ourselves, Swinny, how's your week been?
Oh, week has been pretty good. I've been playing a lot more.
Any big things happen this week for you?
Any big things? No. What are you? What are you trying to fry me for? I don't understand.
Nothing. Just any big events or anything happen?
No, we're stuck at home. What can possibly happen at the moment? In our daily lives, outside of obviously the big happenings in the industry. What could possibly happen? We're stuck at home. Nothing
big in my world.
So let me throw the question back to you, integot. You've had a quiet week.
Yeah, pretty quiet week. Very excited about new Batman movie, getting the trailer, Suicide Squad, movie and game, had a baby, lots of stuff happening.
And just throw that last one in there like it's less important than DC FanDome.
Well, it's definitely not more important than that. But just briefly on it, it's I had this word for our baby. I think it's the most courteous baby I've ever heard of in my life. And what I mean by that, courteous or thoughtful or something. So he is insane. If a baby doesn't cry, it's not a good sign. If it's crying all the time, it's probably not that great of a sign either. The thing is with him, he'll cry quite softly at the start to tell you, and he's got very distinct cries. Whether he wants to get changed or something's not right, or if he wants to feed, that's a different cry as well. But he'll start at a really low volume. He's kind of just going, hey, come on guys, I need a feed, stop slacking, it's been 3-4 hours, help me out here. It's amazing. And then you go do it and he settles straight away. He's it's seriously insane, man. We're so blessed. And I'm sure it's going to change really quickly, but
Don't say that, you'll curse yourself.
Nah, look, you know what? The key thing is that if it's at the start and that's just the way it works, it's great. It's it's a blessing to have it really easy at the start, because the first week can be really, really, really tough to adjust. So he's helped us really transition into our second baby, which is really exciting. And it probably catch me in a year whether we try to go again, but 2's awesome.
It's like you're at a theme park. Oh, we want to have another go. Let's go.
I'm like Activision. I'm like another COD game. Yeah, well, let's go again. Let's get another out.
It's like the whole yearly sequel structure, and then suddenly you're like Assassin's Creed. We're going to take a year off. We're going to take a year off. We're going to come back and it's going to have RPG elements.
You probably won't understand this, but I actually said to one of my mates that, the new baby, he's quite coachable. Does that make any sense to you?
Oh, that's the corporate integot coming through.
No. It's actually from footy. It's from mostly AFL. What I've heard it, but I'm not sure if it's in other codes. But basically it means like there's certain players that are coachable. It's like you can sit them down, you can do things and they respond really quickly. And it's like, even if they're not that great, they'll always become great because they respond to the feedback. And I think he's a bit like that. It's like you do something and you set something up and he responds to it really well. And then you sort of, he's happy, we're happy, it's all good. So
can I ask a question? And this applies to, to both of your kids. If they choose to start supporting an AFL team other than Collingwood,
no.
What
like
happens?
No, it's unacceptable. So like, and I'm not even like kidding. So, for everyone who listens, I'm a huge, insane fan of Collingwood Magpies. It's a AFL football team. Started in 1892. It's a long storied history. Like to the point where like I've literally cried like watching them lose games. Like it's so insane. But I know, people think I'm nuts, but I genuinely like do not care if he's gay, straight, trans, Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, atheist, whatever. Like for me, the one thing he can't change is he has to be a Collingwood fan. Both of them.
Oh, man.
Like it's a choice. It's a complete, like the thing is, from my perspective, it's completely arbitrary choice. All those other things are like driven by who you are and all this other stuff. It's a made up game. It's all made up. So you just got to go for the team that your family goes for. And everyone in my family goes for Collingwood, so they have to go for Collingwood.
But
I'd rather them not.
What happens if they choose to follow another team? Do they get disowned?
No, but I'd be pretty upset, to be honest.
Yeah, it's funny because my dad was a St Kilda supporter, and us three kids, we all supported Essendon. And I have no idea where that came from. And to this day, even though definitely don't follow the AFL anymore, but
yeah,
I'm still an Essendon supporter. While my siblings ended up kind of going towards navigating or towards the teams that their partners support, like Richmond and things like that. So I'm still stuck supporting Essendon in a very like lapsed manner, but and I still don't know why. I still don't know where it came from. But at least I'm not going to force it upon my children.
Yeah, but it's a bit different. Like for me and my family, it's almost like a religion. It's the closest thing to religion in our family. Like we've had huge fights about it. We've like, it's been nuts. So, like, it honestly, and people have asked me because they know how nuts I am about it. I don't mind if he goes for anything else outside of Collingwood. Like, he has to go for Collingwood if in NFL and all these other sports I follow, it doesn't bother me if he goes for other teams. It's just Collingwood. Like, I'd rather him not even follow, or either of them follow the AFL than go for another team and be really into that. That would bug me so much. Because it's also, you got to remember, like, if you finally win the premiership, then you want to celebrate with your kids, Like, it's a family affair. Like, that's awesome kind of thing to happen. So,
not that I'm wishing, horrible things upon you and your family, but I would love a what-if scenario when your kids are older where they have actually chosen to support another team and their team beats Collingwood in the grand final.
I know.
That would be a fly-on-the-wall moment there.
Well, it almost happened because my wife, she goes for Collingwood, like pretty much what you're saying. She didn't really have a team and then she kind of got roped into going for Collingwood. But she grew up in Sydney, whereas I grew up in Melbourne. So she does have a bit of an affinity with the local team, the Greater Western Sydney Giants, to a point where she cried when they lost a game against the Western Bulldogs because she was so upset about it. So I kind of think she's almost like veering on going for the Giants. Either that or she has quote unquote two teams, which you're not allowed to have in the AFL, in my opinion.
You're not allowed to have.
No.
You're saying things are arbitrary, but then there's this specific rule that you're not allowed to have two teams.
No, it's arbitrary to choose the one team you're allowed to choose. You're not allowed to choose more than one team. I like how we mentioned that I just had a new baby, and I feel like I spent all the time talking about the rules of him following the AFL. So, and I think this does kind of apply into the segue. So the DC FanDome, and why I sort of say it applies in a segue. So my understanding of this lead up to this event, very much as a response to, hey, we don't have a physical Comic-Con, this year. So like rather than just going through Comic-Con's online presence, which a lot of companies pulled out of, DC, I think smartly, to be honest, said, no, we'll have our own event. Now, you know, I've got all the clippings of this and I won't bother showing them in the YouTube clips or going through them on the podcast here. But, you know, they said very explicitly in the FAQs that it's going to be shown live. It's going to be interactive. They even had like keyboard controls. And again, I've got all of these screenshots because I couldn't believe it. I thought this is so odd. And they said, you know, if you do not watch it live, can I watch it later? And it says, no, you have to watch it live or you don't get another opportunity. So I went crazy and I was like, oh shit, this is like really annoying because I've got a baby and I've got to sort out some times to watch this and, you know, apply it from an Australian context and all this other kind of stuff. And there was an event in our, you know, overnight, which was 3 a.m. our time. And the VODs just went live on YouTube straight away. And I was like, oh, okay. So I don't need to watch it like when it is live. I can just watch it on YouTube. So yeah, like offline, I pinged you about it. But did you think this whole thing was odd or like the way they were kind of setting it and structuring it?
Well, I knew it was going to happen.
To be fair, you did. No, to be fair, you did say that.
I wouldn't have minded doing it, but the fact is, look, I know with a lot of Comic-Con stuff when they show, oh, here's a teaser for the new, you know, Marvel film or whatever. A lot of those stuff don't come out right away, or you'll get some dodgy mobile camera footage or something like that. But when it comes to video games, the only time that I've known where they will show something to a select audience and it's not then, at least in modern times, then distributed via like YouTube and that, is when they have press, you know, behind the scenes press, I guess, you know, events at E3 for the press specifically. So they had Cyberpunk where they showed like a 20-minute demo to the press, and that demo didn't come out for quite a few months afterwards. So other than that, when it comes to trailers and things like that, they generally always come out at the same time, if not very soon after. And the thing is, the two big game announcements, I wasn't so much invested in them that I was going to go and sign up and give them my details and stuff. So I just said, I'm just going to take a guess on this, and if they don't release it, then I'm going to rely on you to tell me about it.
Oh, thanks. So I specifically called out to you to say to like watch it, and then you didn't.
No, because I knew that they put the trailers up. I knew they put the trailers up.
Yeah, but you didn't know that, so you should have lied just then. This is bothering so much. I actually got the FAQs out and live, so I can see them. It literally says, it goes, if you don't watch it during the 24 hours, you will miss it unless you have access to time travel. And there was all this stuff about like, you know, literally it had keyboard controls and references to Unity 3D. And I logged into DC FanDome and I couldn't see any of that. Like,
also, there was no actual interactive.
No.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was really weird. It was just like a video feed when I logged in, and I actually was like questioning myself. I was trying to find it online and then, you know, check streamers. Maybe I've done it wrong, but yeah, it just didn't seem to be what I thought it was going to be. So, because it just turned out to be a stream in the end. And I'm like, this is so dumb. Like See, I actually think it would have been clever if they made it so that you could only go on there and then strike down people who tried to upload it. Like, I actually think that's a smart idea. I'd be interested if someone does that one time. I
knew the game trailers would get out there very quickly. I didn't know about the movie stuff though. So, but you know, for the purpose of this podcast, the movie stuff didn't worry me as much. So,
yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. And as we normally do, we usually go into the bigger story. And then the biggest story in this case for me, in terms of bigwig topical stuff from the DC FanDome, is Suicide Squad. We finally have an official proper announcement, some trailers around it. It's quite exciting. So English developer Rocksteady Studios, creator of the much celebrated Batman Arkham series, including 3 mainline entries and the VR spin-off, are now tackling sort of a new IP in Suicide Squad. And the full title of this game is Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, as everyone suspected. So we only saw a trailer in the DC FanDome, but there was quite a few clarifications from the head of, or one of the co-founders, Sefton Hill from Rocksteady, just on certain things and how they would actually work. So now we know the game's coming out in 2022 on PC and only on next gen, so PS5 and Xbox Series X. I hope people don't ask whether it's coming on the Switch, because it won't be unless it's a new Switch. It is set in an open world metropolis, which is really, really cool in my opinion. The characters so far that we know, Harlequin, Deadshot, King Shark, and Australia's own Captain Boomerang. And one of the tidbits, before I sort of just get your thoughts, and there's some other stuff that we'll chat about, is that it's actually a continuation of the Batman Arkham verse, which I thought was, really interesting. It's not how I sort of interpreted it when I was watching the trailer. What did you think?
First of all, this was a really good trailer.
And should we tackle that now or in the overall thoughts? Because the trailers for all these DC FanDome things, including the movie trailers, I was like, wow, this is just like 10 out of 10 trailers. Like, they're so good, the trailers.
Yeah, well, I did watch the trailer for, the movie stuff, so the ones you've referenced here about the music choices specifically. I don't know if I thought that the choice of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah for the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League was as good as you mentioned. Yeah.
Okay. Let me break all these things down. Number one, and we're going way off a sidetrack already. B.O.B., Bombs Over Baghdad from Outkast. I love that song so much that I actually learned how to sing it, like rap it. And it's quite a quick song, especially at the start. With Andre 3000's verse. I love that song so much. When I could hear the first few notes of it in this trailer for Suicide Squad, I was like so amped up. And I will defend the Leonard Cohen thing with the Schneider cut because it is so camp. It is such camp to have Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah over the back of Suicide. What's it called? Justice League. That to me, that's perfect Schneider. To have Leonard Cohen is just so ridiculous.
It's perfect Schneider, but it's unintentional Schneider.
No, but that's what's so beautiful about it. That's why I love it. And then we have Nirvana, Something in the Way with the Batman trailer. I'm like, this is just like, I love it. It's like depressing, don't have any feelings.
Good. That was good because the melody of that, the very slow melody, they kind of made it a bit, it was a bit synthy. And it kind of was a bit like, very, very, I'm trying to think of the right word, but almost like Halloween, like horror movie kind of synthy to it. And I thought that was actually really good. That trailer itself, we're not talking about the movie stuff, but that trailer was interesting.
It was cool. So. It's very gothic almost. Like it was kind of like, it was cool trailer. Good trailers all around. And, we're only going to mention the video game stuff, but it was really, really good. And I think one thing we should also point out, just so people understand our maybe bias, I don't think we're very biased in general, but for me personally, I've always preferred DC. Like if I asked you this question, if you could only have DC IPs or Marvel IPs, which one would you choose?
Just IPs in general. Like, doesn't matter what the film, TV, comic, or anything.
Correct. So if you pick DC, it means you never have any Avengers movies, games, comics, X-Men. That's all gone. And
then I'd have to go with Marvel for one very particular reason, which is X-Men. That's why.
Sure. See, I would pick DC, and I kind of knew that you were going to say Marvel. Because I definitely lean more DC. You'd probably lean more Marvel. Obviously the Marvel movies are better, movies on, like from a consensus point of view. But I still love the IP from DC and just the tone of DC in general. But
getting back to Suicide Squad.
Yes. What do you think of this game? And the fact that it was like a cinematic trailer, not a gameplay trailer.
So... that's the one thing I was going to say about the trailer is that it was a really good trailer, but for how long this game has been rumored to be in development, and the fact that it's been so long between, large projects for them, it is quite disappointing that they didn't have any kind of gameplay at all. Thankfully, the trailer was good though. So if the trailer was kind of average, then I think you'd really notice the lack of gameplay more so. But it's interesting. I'm I won't say that I'm super pumped for the game just because, it's maybe not as much my thing as other people. But I think for people that love the Arkham games, I think it's really good, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it actually plays like.
Mm. And I think you're right about this game, and now the fact that it's actually going to come out in 2022, so that marks maybe about 6 years since their latest release, which would have been the VR version, well, not VR version, but the Batman VR experience and game. Like, I kind of wonder if they just were like, they want the game to be as close to the cinematic trailer as possible. Do you think that's what they're kind of going for a little bit? And then maybe they've pulled back and said, you know what, we don't want to have a gameplay trailer because we don't want to be accused later of doing like an Anthem or something like that.
I actually think the reason is because of Gotham Knights. So,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, the games do sound quite different in many ways. Like, first of all, this is a wonderful player co-op game, and even if you don't have co-op players, it's going to fill them in with, like CPU squad mates that you can swap between, which is very different than what Gotham Knights, which we'll get into next, is doing. But I think that if they showed the gameplay off of this, considering this is exclusively next gen title, whereas Gotham Knights is going to be on current gen and next gen, I reckon that not so much that they would have looked very similar, more so that Gotham Knights probably would have looked worse than it would have otherwise if they'd actually shown gameplay of this alongside at the same time, essentially in the same event. I think that's one of the reasons why, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why they chose to just do a cinematic one for this. And then, with Gotham Knights, they did a kind of a bit of a mix.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I didn't go away from it thinking, where's the gameplay? Like I felt very satisfied personally just to see it announced and kind of see the tone of what they want from the game. And, even the part, because Superman turns up and it's like a dark version of Superman. He actually kills a pilot that he supposedly saved, which kind of, puts an interesting spin on the tone of the actual game. Maybe that, all the good guys, quote unquote, all the Justice League have been, taken over or something's happened to them, right? But, that point around, what do you do and how do you present it? Like, I do think it's interesting, and you probably need to look forward and go, if you put out gameplay now and the game's still maybe 2 years away, maybe even longer, what are you going to do next? And you've probably seen a lot of games suffer from that, where they've actually put out gameplay and then it's 2-3 years later and you're like, is that game coming? Like Beyond Good and Evil 2. Like that's years old now, that gameplay footage. And I don't know, I think it does get a bit weird if you do that. So probably makes sense. And I certainly didn't feel like I was missing anything there. I thought it was really surprising when I saw that it was a 1 to 4 player co-op game. And to your point, getting filled by bots. I always get nervous about those games though. Can you think of any recent examples of games like that where it's worked well, where you have a predominantly co-op game, but the bots actually work well? Because that's what I worry about in this game.
I mean, I guess you got games like Ghost Recon Wildlands where you have AI teammates a lot in that game. And that game, it ended up actually being that you, just by, directing them and using drones and things like that, the game actually was apparently quite easy because of that. But
yeah.
I don't think, and I guess also, Metal Gear Solid 5, it wasn't so much a squad, but you had a companion that you could choose to bring along missions that had different abilities and things like that. I think it makes sense for this game, simply because the whole thing is they are a squad and they will often not do things by themselves, like as in, it's kind of the whole focus is that they're teaming up to do this. And also it makes sense considering that, not that every level's going to be having them taking on Superman or someone of that power level, but it makes sense that they have to be a team for it to narratively make sense why they're actually able to potentially take these people down.
Yeah.
So,
and almost individually, they're not kind of like hyper powered super villains, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think Harlequin to me would ever be like a solo super villain, you know, like being able to sort of build a whole game around that. Like, it kind of wouldn't make sense to me in this kind of Arkhamverse when you've got the Justice League, where they're, to me, a bit more like powerful one for one, if that makes any sense. So I do think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I think it's something to look for, where, you know, how well the game will work if you are playing more like a single player style, which often like is what I would do, because I don't normally play these games on launch. And by the time I get into them, it's sort of like, you know, even you guys, you might not be, you know, that keen to play it, you know, 2-3 years later, like in co-op. Like, maybe you will, maybe you won't, right? But normally that's a launch thing.
I guess another game that I could probably, in my head, you know, it's probably not going to play the same, but I just think the Mass Effect games. So they're very focused on companions and having very minimal control over those companions. But the difference here is that you're able to swap between them, and I think that could actually end up being really cool. So,
yeah, and you know, talking about the co-op, it actually does link in with the next game, which was the other major game in the DC FanDome, Gotham Knights. So yeah, quite interesting. So WB Games Montreal, who I think personally, and I'm not sure if you share this view, but I think they've been very maligned for their prequel entry, Batman Arkham Origins, which I thought was a good game. But, you know, it's almost like people try to make it seem like that doesn't even exist in the Arkham series of games. Gotham Knights, long rumored, teased many times for about a year now, or over a year, set in the Batman universe, and it does incorporate a new entry to Batman's Rogues Gallery, which is the Court of Owls, which was also heavily rumored and then also teased at. So again, here we actually had the trailer and the gameplay footage, and as we called out in the last segment, coming out in 2021, but it is coming out on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and then also PC, not Switch. Don't think it will be coming out on Switch. And yeah, like, I thought this was a really cool trailer as well. And the trailer actually opens with Batman is dead. What were your impressions of the trailer and the gameplay footage?
So the trailer didn't sell me much at all, honestly.
Wow. Okay, yeah, go on.
Just because I'm several games behind in the Arkham games alone, and so it didn't kind of hook me. Also, I don't have a lot of knowledge or connection to essentially any of the characters, which is Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Hood, and Robin, and obviously.
It's simple. Can I break it down to you?
In there, but
can I break it down to you? Nightwing used to be Robin. Red Hood used to be Robin. Robin is Robin. There's many others who are Robin. Okay, so you don't know those characters that well.
No, well, I know of them, but I can't say I've sat there. Like, my knowledge essentially of Batman has generally come from the films.
Okay.
Obviously,
they don't really
Robin's
cover
been
those
in the
characters
films,
too
but
much.
like Nightwing, I can't remember if, for instance, the Robin that was in was Batman Forever, that loved Batman film, was Dick Grayson or someone else, or I don't think it was Jason Todd, but
no, it was Dick Grayson, I think.
What I was going to say is, while the trailer didn't really hook me, I actually quite liked the gameplay footage. I think it was like an 8-minute gameplay video that they had where they ran through a mission. There was I believe in Mr. Freeze's storyline. That was actually interesting to watch, and I'm glad that they kind of did show you that there is still some stealth in this, because I was very worried that, I loved the stealth in Arkham Asylum, and stealth has always been one of my favorite gameplay mechanics, and it's good that even though it does support 2-player co-op, it doesn't mean that you can't do stealth, but I guess it depends on the character you choose.
Yeah, and I think as opposed to Suicide Squad, it seems like the co-op part is not as integral, but it does support, like, the whole game does support 2-player co-op, but it, they've kind of made it clear that it's very much a single-player game. A lot of the gameplay footage was just the single player, like, it wasn't, the multiple players on the screen or anything like that. And, weirdly enough, like, for me, this game so far, I'm like, wow, this is just a successor or a link into the Arkham universe, or the Arkham games, I should say. But the thing is, after the presentations, they came out and made it really clear that this is not a successor or in the Arkham series, and Suicide Squad is, which I thought was like really weird. And I'm not sure if that's a, you know, Rocksteady throwing their weight around a little bit, which can happen in these kind of situations, where they'll be like, hey, you know, Arkham is our baby and our thing that we've really driven, so we'll continue those storylines, and you can do something that's off in the distance, which is, you know, punctuated by the whole Batman is dead. And by the way, can I just say, Batman is dead. I give it a 95% chance you can play, or Batman is in this game as a character later in the game.
I don't think you'd be able to play as him, but I think he'll be in it.
Yeah, he's going to be in there. I'll almost say 99% chance he's going to be in there. Maybe just to play as him, I'd give it maybe 70% chance. And it could be a 5-minute segment. But you'll play as Batman at some point. But
probably the thing that most interested me about this was the whole Court of Owls thing. That does seem... Anytime you've got an intriguing narrative hook, you know, it's going to get you more invested in potentially playing the game. So that did seem interesting to me. So we'll see whether or not it ends up, you know, panning out to actually be a great game or not.
Yeah, and, you know, as opposed to you, like, I actually really loved the trailer. Like, I loved everything about this. Like, this actually made me really, really hyped for this game. Like, I love the trailer. I love the gameplay footage. I've played a lot of the Arkham series. I love those games. You know, a plug for our Game of Some Other Year segment. You know, we'll be covering one of the Arkham games, you know, in the considerations for Game of Some Other Year. But yeah, like, I just think, to me, it just looked like more Arkham. And I'm all about that. And there's some new stuff around a leveling system, which seemed kind of interesting. Yeah, it just seemed like a really, really cool game. I'm really vibing it and really looking forward to it, to be honest. And keen to see when it's actually going to come out, because they sort of teased it and it's been in development for a long time, or they haven't really been doing much, WB Games Montreal, because last game that they really released was, from memory, about 2013. So yeah, it's going to be like 8 years since then when this game finally does come out. So here's hoping it's actually earlier in the year rather than too late.
Say 2013. I thought they had worked on. Oh no, I'm getting confused. Sorry, I'm getting confused with Square Enix. Yeah, that's a different thing. So don't mind me. Don't mind me.
It's all good. So just wrapping up the DC FanDome, like what did you think? Especially, like, how do you think they executed the whole thing and, you know, launching it all?
I was there for all of it. You know, I signed up. I was in the interactive things. No, I just watched some videos on YouTube. That was my overall thoughts of their overall FanDome experience. It is good to have some news and cool stuff out there, though. I will say that. You know, whether or not it's the movies, you know, seeing a trailer for, you know, Batman and Zack Snyder's friggin' Justice League cut, which apparently is going to be split into 4 parts, I was reading before. And I'm like, oh my God, can you get even more pretentious about this goddamn Snyder cut? But when it comes to the games, it's good. It's good to finally have these out there. I think for people that are fans of the Arkham series and of what Rocksteady does as well, I think there's a lot to love here. So I think it's really great to have it out.
And it is interesting as well, because, you know, we have mentioned this before, but it seemed like at some point the parent company, Warner Brothers, was looking to actually sell their whole games division, which would include these developers and, you know, against the suite of games. And, you know, you'd presume that it'd be the rights to make the games as well, like the IP for, you know, the whole sort of DC universe would go as one big thing if a publisher wanted to buy all of that out. And I don't know, I think personally, like, I think this was a big positive to me. Like like everything they did here, it feels like DC's on the way up. Like, the games look great. I'm really excited for them. You know, you'd have to see how they review and everything and when they come out. But the movies seem to be way more on track than they ever have been historically. You know, they've actually done some good stuff in the last couple of years with some of the movies, like Joker was amazing. Yeah, like, I feel like DC's on the way up here. So I kind of wonder if they go back, because it sounded like they would not going to shop the games division anymore, but maybe they will open it up again. Maybe this will spark a bit of interest in some of the big publishers.
Yeah, and I think with that whole divestment story, I don't think it would have been the DC IP though. But obviously Rocksteady's.
It's got to be, man.
Because DC still would remain with Warner Brothers property, so I don't think they would divest the.
You can divest it though. Yeah, but they were talking about getting $4 billion for it. Like, there's no way unless it's the IP as well. They just wouldn't get that amount of money.
I think that they would have retained the rights to the game IP. So
they wouldn't get $4 billion. There's no way. Man,
I'm just giving you my thoughts.
I can say if you're wrong. No way you'd pay $4 billion for Rocksteady, and who else? Like, who are you paying for?
NetherRealm, Mortal Kombat.
Yeah,
they're pretty big. They're pretty big.
They're big, but
IPs.
They're not $4 billion. No way. Like, that's kind of what was rumored.
We'll agree to disagree on this one.
No way, man. You had who was it recently that got bought out for $250 million? Oh, Sony bought a studio for $250 million, and it's like insanely better than that. I don't know. Like, it doesn't add up to me unless there's some rights for maybe it's like rights for 20 years or something to the DC Universe games or something like that, or 10 years. But not just the divisions themselves. There's no way they'd be able to get that amount of money. I'm going to try to correct you somehow. But talking about business news, which I love, and I'll argue with Swinny about it constantly. Apple strikes back. They are bringing a gun to Epic's knife fight. They have gone hard at Epic, and I think that this is going to be a back and forth between these companies, and we'll jump in when we think it's interesting enough. But Apple is just really, and I said this last week, I didn't actually think Epic had much of a case against Apple in their original suit, but then what Apple's done since has just totally baffled me, to be honest. They actually are seeking and have positioned that they're going to terminate the developer license, which means, like, that's not just for Fortnite. That means for Epic itself. So the Unreal Engine, which a lot of games on the App Store rely on, they won't be able to have any of the developer tools. So they essentially won't be able to support the App Store as one of the avenues of using the Unreal Engine, which is really common, actually, especially with the big mobile games. So this has actually caused a huge amount of issues for Epic. And there's been a back and forth with the CEO, Tim Sweeney, directly to Tim Cook and other senior leaders at Apple. And then Apple's fired back saying that Epic, they actually said to Epic, you can just reverse your update and we'll get Fortnite straight up back onto the App Store. And then Epic has seemingly refused to do that. And then finally, Epic, which I love this, they've got an in-game cup, free Fortnite cup in-game in Fortnite, and they've got a new outfit, which is the Tart Tycoon. So it's the character that's like, the spoof of the sort of Big Brother controlling character that was in the Fortnite parody 1984 clip. So you can actually play as that character now, and they've called it Tart Tycoon. This is just nuts that these mega companies are fighting this out. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah, we said last week that this is just like a corporate slap fight. That's what it is, and obviously there's huge stakes. I'm not saying it's not, but it is very much, it's big corporate versus big corporate. But I think the biggest worry with this is the impact on those smaller developers. So
yeah.
Because they're caught in the crossfire. They have no, other than obviously agreeing to whatever license terms to use the Unreal Engine, they have no real control over this. If Epic chooses to do this, and then this Apple do terminate. I don't know if technically they have terminated or it's just a threat at this point. But
no, they're going to terminate. I think on the 28th of August.
And that's not that long away.
No,
so
no, and that's why Epic has sought a very urgent filing against Apple and a motion to restrain what they want to do. So yeah, I just confirmed. Yeah, it's 28th of August.
What if there's games that were literally in the end of production cycle right now, and they're due to go live in the next couple of months on the App Store? And what happens then if they lose? If essentially Epic can't support Unreal as an engine on that store anymore, what happens to those people? And because they have essentially no input in what Epic are doing at all. And I know that Epic are very mindful of this, I'm sure. They get a lot of money out of their engine licensing division, that essentially put them on the map after, obviously, they Unreal itself and, obviously the old, the earlier Epic games. I'm not saying that they've only been around since Unreal, but other than, those big Gears of War and things like that, it's essentially been engine licensing until Fortnite. That's kind of been what has been the backbone of Epic until Fortnite blew up. So
yeah,
I'm sure they're very mindful of this, but it sucks for them small devs if they get dragged into it.
Yeah, and it's pretty far-reaching. And I agree. I think they wouldn't have expected Apple to do this. I think they would have thought it was a risk. But it's, to me, it actually, it's such an indicator that they're throwing their weight around. It's kind of unnecessary.
It's such an indic move. That's what it is.
You know what I mean? It's just they didn't need to do it. Getting Fortnite off the store is pretty. I would have done the exact same thing if I was them. Taking it off the store, send an email saying, hey, reverse your update. We'll put you back up. Don't do that again. If they don't reverse it, okay, you're off. Because it would just be a domino effect if they didn't do that. But going the next step of removing them even access to the tools so that they can keep developing the Unreal Engine and, just random games, I'm just looking through it, things like Mortal Kombat and Injustice on mobile and Hello Neighbor and all these kind of games, you won't be able to update them soon. Because once the iOS, gets updated, Epic won't be able to update Unreal Engine. It means all of those developers are stuffed. So it's just, I don't know, it's very strange from Apple. I don't think it will hurt their court case now, but I think again, as I was saying last time, I think from a regulator point of view, to me, it does look like, hey, they are really trying to throw their weight around here. And kind of that monopolistic sort of, are they a service or are they a sort of utility? It's going to really call into question. So to me, this is literally one of the most interesting things that happened in gaming for a long time. It's just so bizarre. And yeah, I just really look forward to where it sort of lands.
I'm sure we'll be talking about it in over the next month, at least
Definitely.
one or two more times.
Definitely. And very much changing gears, Nintendo Indie World. So between our recordings, Nintendo announced and then presented the latest Indie World Showcase. Now, just to sort of couch this, there's 24 games in this, so I think we're trying to be a bit smart about how we're actually going to go through this and go through it in pretty much rapid fire. And the actual presentation's not very long, so it's about a minute per game or not even on average. So, very much go and watch the video. But probably, the first thing we should point out, and, as we do normally try to call out the big piece of news first, that, Swinny's favorite game, Untitled Goose Game, is getting a 2-player update, co-op update. And that's from Australia's own House developer. So, that's coming out on the 23rd of September. And it seems like that would be incorporated in the physical edition as well. So I'm actually looking forward to this because my wife struggled to get to play this game and solve the puzzles for Untitled Goose Game. So I think it'd be a really cool way for us to play it together. Just will be interesting to see if, there's a lot of changes to the game because of the co-op. And, I said that it's your favorite game. Have you actually played this game?
Yeah, I've played it.
Okay. Yeah. Do you like it?
I respect the game. I just don't think it's a great game. It's I think it's funny. It's it looks great. Its audio design is really cool. Just the actual gameplay loop just didn't appeal to me. But I would say that to me, this wasn't the biggest piece of news. It was a certain game that I'll call out when we get to it. So.
Okay, fair enough. I think for the kind of mainstream, it's probably the biggest piece of news, and that's why they put it last as well. But yeah, so let's get through it. So what I've done is extensive research as much as I could.
I'll counter that when we get to it.
Would it counter my extensive research, or what's the biggest game?
No. Well, you'll see.
Okay, fair enough. So what I've done is, because essentially this had a lot of ports, so really what I want to go through and think through, what's interesting because it's the first time it's come out, or it's the first time you can play it on a console versus PC or Apple Arcade. When is it coming out? All this other kind of stuff. So I'll kind of rapid fire go through it, and then maybe we'll pick out a few games that are interesting to us. So games that are launched exclusively on Switch, so the first time we've seen it, Raji, an Ancient Epic, and Evergate as well. They are coming out on other platforms later. What's available now as a console exclusive, so has been either on PC or Apple Arcade, A Short Hike, Takeshi and Hiroshi, and Inmost. What's available now, and it's pretty much on everything, Manifold Garden and Spiritfarer, so that's also included on Xbox Game Pass. Coming this year to the Switch as a Switch exclusive, but been on other places, Struggling, Grindstone, and Hades. Coming next year as a Switch console exclusive, at least it hasn't been confirmed on anything else so far, is Bear and Breakfast, Garden Story, and Card Shark. New games coming out this year, and they're pretty much going on everything. Haven, Going Under, Gono 2, and The Red Lantern. New multi-platform console ports, so things that are going on multiple consoles at the same time this year. Torchlight 3, Unveiled, and Hypnospace Outlaw, which is also going to be on Xbox Game Pass. Is this the one you wanted to talk about?
No, but we'll
okay, I'm almost done.
I'll give my thoughts at the end.
And then finally, the new multi-plat console ports, but they're coming next year. Subnautica Below Zero, and She Dreams Elsewhere. Now, some of those aren't, going on PlayStation or aren't going on Xbox. We'll post it when we post the clip on YouTube where they're all going, but I think that's probably the best way to think about the games. So what was the one that really stood out to you?
It's the one they started with. It's Hades. To me, that's the biggest story.
Yeah, so that stood out to me as well.
Hades had not been confirmed for any console at this point. It's only ever been a PC in early access form.
Is that right?
Yeah. So it's on PC in early access. And Supergiant has a lot of name recognition, and not only Bastion and Transistor were huge games, Bastion especially. But so to me, this was a big news story, not a bloody co-op mode in Untitled Goose Game. Hades is a title that a lot of people are looking forward to, and whether or not it's because they didn't want to play it in early access form or they were waiting for a console port. But to me, that's the one that stood out the most. And also, I will say, while it's not the biggest name game, I do love Hypnospace Outlaw. And it's really interesting that it's got keyboard and mouse support on Switch, which is fantastic because that game you'd struggle to use that for control, I think, because the whole point is you're navigating around GeoCity style kind of, old school websites and doing like searching for copyright strikes and stuff like that. So,
okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, because I saw that and I just, I'm surprised that they're allowing that. I know that generally the Switch allows for keyboard and mouse, like it's pretty native for a long time in the Switch, but you don't normally see those things get activated or used.
That game got a lot of buzz when it first came out, so it wouldn't surprise me if they actually got an exception if there is any kind of restrictions around it, simply because it's a game that when it comes out, even though it's not a new game, I think it will have a bit of potentially a mini blow up now that people are like, oh, you can use keyboard and mouse on the Switch, and this game's really cool, and it's got awesome soundtrack and visual style. And anyone who hasn't checked out Hypnospace Outlaw, it's also on Xbox Game Pass, which is great. And it's just a fun kind of old school. I don't know how to classify it. It's almost a game without a genre. It's crazy.
And just going back to Hades, because that was one that really stood out to me. And Supergiant Games have very storied history, a lot of great games that have released. And, a really big thing for me, a couple of things, as we sort of spoke about at the start of the whole show, being a dad, the Switch is just like the best dad device that could ever exist. People are calling out or whatever, you just press the power button, it just snaps the game. deal with whatever you need to deal with. Great. If you have a bit of free time again, you can just resume playing, which is just freaking awesome. But I do love playing on PC as well as, the other consoles. But Hades, what I loved is they actually are supporting cross-play saving. So, you can progress on the Switch, and it just does it with the cloud, and then you could just go back to your actual PC and continue playing, which is just it's surprising how critical it becomes for me as a selling point with these kind of games. And I'm really glad that Rocket League updating, so they're going to change the whole progression system soon. But games like Skyrim, which, again, I'm going to start playing for our game of some other year, 2011, it actually made me really choose and think, where am I playing that? Because you can't support cross-play and cross-save with that game. So I'm going to play it on the Switch, but, I would have loved if that also supported me jumping back to PC and playing it on PC a little bit and then going back to the Switch. So, yeah, and probably, from this indie world, the other big thing I wanted to just point out was it actually made me sign up to Apple Arcade to try out a few of these games. So I tried Takeshi and Hiroshi and a few other games. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Apple Arcade, the games are actually very high quality, but it feels like just a great idea, but just doesn't really make sense for that platform. And I'd love to know the numbers that they sell on that, because it doesn't feel like anyone talks about Apple Arcade. And I know you don't have any Apple devices, so you don't have it, obviously, but it's a good service, but I don't know, it seems a bit strange. And then you compare it to Xbox Game Pass from a value point of view, and it's just, kind of almost laughable, right?
Well, I wouldn't say laughable. I mean, it's still a good deal. I think if you like the games that are on there, you're still able to get them for a pretty decent price. And you can cancel when you finish playing the majority games you wanted to play, assuming, I don't know how many new games they're putting on each month to Apple Arcade. But there's some good ones on there. I can't remember.
Really good.
What's the title of that synthwave shoot 'em up kind of game? What's the name of it? Trying to find it. Trying to find the name of it. It's got I can't find it.
Sayonara Wild Hearts?
That's it, Sayonara Wild Hearts. So that's the game out of all of them that I want to would have liked to play the most, but it's obviously not anything else just yet. Unless they did they announce a Switch port for that, or am I misremembering that one?
So I think it's out for the Switch already, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, just check. It's out for the Switch. It's out on Xbox One. And I think that's the weird thing about Apple Arcade, because all the good games, they're just porting them, which I kind of don't think is a really good sign for Apple Arcade, to be honest. Kind of reminds me of the Wii U. Feels like every good game is getting ported because people are talking about it and going, oh, you got to play this game. It's just amazing. And people don't want to sign up to it or pay for a game on sort of Apple Arcade. So What the Golf, a lot of people spoke a lot about that. It ended up getting ported to Nintendo Switch. Maybe that was always their intention. But yeah, there's a bunch of games I want to play. I've got a free trial for a month. I'll see how I go. I'll try to get through most of the games that I'm interested in. There's Rayman. There's just a lot of games on there, man. Shantae. Yeah, Sayonara Wild Hearts. I installed so many, I ran out of storage on my phone. So, but yeah, no, I think it was a good showcase. I don't know what your overall thoughts on the showcase was. I thought it was good, and I actually liked the pacing of it, just really trying to burn through it rather than drag anything out.
It was a terrible showcase. They didn't announce a new Smash Brothers character.
No, fair enough. And sort of to segue to our next segment, there was one game I was expecting at the Nindy Showcase, Sports Story. So I thought Sports Story was going to be a part of this Nindy Showcase, and maybe because of that, they also actually came out. So another Aussie developer, there's a lot of great Aussie indie developers at the moment, and they seem to be all in single states, you know what I mean? Like Queensland, Victoria, South Australia,
it's good. There's less chance of them spreading COVID to each other.
Exactly. But, I was really pumped to hear more about this game because Golf Story is a really cool game. Came out in the launch year for the Switch. And, the successor to that, Sports Story, they were going to tackle more sports. And then they basically come out and said that the game has become really, I think the game has become rather ambitious. And it's moved from coming out mid-2020 to just TBA now. But you would expect it coming out next year. Like, that would be pretty crazy if they extended it longer than that. It's not the kind of game you'd want to be spending 4, 5, 6 years on. But yeah, they seem to be in a bit of bother. Did you ever actually play Golf Story?
Yeah, I probably played it before. Oh no, maybe I didn't play it before you because you had to switch before me. But I remember that we had another friend of ours. It's like no. The reason I bring it up, we have another friend of ours that may even be listening to this. It's like, oh, Golf Story's awesome. I'm like, man, that game is like 2 years old.
Yeah, I think you're confusing me with someone else.
The thing is,
I'm quite offended. By the way,
I'm not having a go at them because it's a great game, right? So I'm glad that they got to play it. I actually only played probably the first couple of hours of it, and I've always left it there on like the homepage of my Switch or whatever you call it, and never kind of felt in the right mood to play it. But I will go back to it at some point.
Yeah, and I loved it, man. It reminded me of the Mario Tennis games on GBA, and it's just such a cool game. And to your point around have you played it before me? I think I bought the Switch on day one that it came out, and I actually bought this game, Golf Story, on day one when it came out and played it. So no, I'd probably doubt it that you've done that. But look, like ultimately it goes back to the Miyamoto-san quote around and I'm gonna butcher it right now because I put myself on the spot. But I've actually forgotten the quote. It's something like a bad game that's released early is bad forever, but a great game that's delayed can be great forever, which is terrible. A telling of his very eloquent quote, which I should have never mentioned. Because it kind of doesn't apply anymore because you can update games. So I think there are many examples of bad games that have become great games. So.
But talking about
save me from myself. Save me from myself.
Another game that's been delayed is Arcane. So, Dishonored, Dev, and Prey and whatnot. So they're pretty kind of, I wouldn't say it hyped because people always keep forgetting about it, but the PS5 launch exclusive Deathloop, the stylish first-person shooter where you could apparently play as the assassin and the target and whatnot, and it's got like a whole time gameplay hook to it. That has also been delayed, and they've actually specified quarter 2 2021. So it's a shame. That would have been a good, get. That was a good get for Sony to have for their launch, but obviously circumstances have prevailed.
And look, like there's a bigger topic here, but do you think there's any chance still that the consoles or one of the consoles will get delayed to 2021?
I don't think...
when I say the consoles, PS5, sorry, and Xbox Series X.
I don't think so, but I think what we might see some regions not launch. Like normally would do, most of the regions would get the consoles at the same time or within the same week. I think they may choose to be a bit more selective if there's any, I guess, limitations there. So, obviously the US market, you'd imagine UK and that. So I think no, but it might affect it for some regions.
Yeah, that's just interesting because you don't really see launch games getting delayed that have been announced as launch games. There are games that were intended to be launch games that never eventuated, and we found out later, but I can't actually think of any examples off the top of my head of games, and now we've had 2 in the space of a week that have been delayed post-launch. It's just, I don't know. The fact that we still don't know when the consoles are coming out, how much they are, does make me question whether there is a chance that one of them will pull the trigger and delay it till, Feb next year, and they'll both just follow suit. I still think that that's a possibility. I think it's more likely they'll release, but, there is still a chance to me. And, very, very different news, but Facebook. So, as most of us would probably know, that Oculus is owned by Facebook. Of the many things that Facebook owns, And generally Facebook, historically I should say, Facebook has always run things where just let people do what they want. Instagram is Instagram, it's not Facebook Instagram, but they're starting to progressively change that. And now they're really pushing hard. So with Oculus, eventually, and it's like 2023, so it's a long, long time away, but they are going to eventually mandate that you have a Facebook account to use Oculus, and they're going to merge the Oculus, I guess the store, or like at least the user identification with your Facebook account. And, you know, we've been chatting about VR and the whole VR space a lot. And just for context for people who listen not from Australia, it's actually really hard to get other VR devices in Australia for a reasonable price. Feels like we're a bit like Brazil, where it's like ridiculous. So the one that I'd definitely want if I was wanting to get into this space would be the Valve Index, but you cannot get that in Australia. Like, you barely get it in America, but you definitely can't get it in Australia. So the Oculus was probably the most realistic for me versus the PSVR, which just feels like, you know, maybe if there's PSVR 2 and it's better, maybe that would be interesting. But the Oculus was, you know, okay, this is kind of interesting. My mate has one. And now with this news about this whole Facebook thing, there is zero chance that I'll be getting an Oculus now. Like, for me, this is just like, nah, no way. Like, does this put you off it, or you just don't care in general?
Oh, it definitely puts me off it. Not that I was, you know, lining up to get an Oculus in general. I'm looking at, you know, VR as an option. I'd really like to try Boneworks, as well as, you know, obviously Half-Life Alyx, Beat Saber, and some stuff like that. Yeah. But, you know, I've definitely... Oculus is also very, I think, quite confusing in the way that it is approached it with all the different types of Oculus. Some of them obviously standalone, some of them requiring, you know, PCs. Which, you know, if you're serious about VR gaming, you're not going to get the standalone. But the standalone apparently was quite good for certain experiences and things like that. But I'm not a Facebook user. I can't stand the platform myself, and I think it sucks. But the thing with this is, Facebook bought Oculus, 6 years ago or something at this point?
Oh, yeah, long time ago.
You know, they've given people a lot of time for this. So I can understand them wanting to actually kind of bring people into the same ecosystem.
But why?
For a number of standpoints. Well, I don't know if it's a technical thing. Their reason is obviously, we'll give people, make it easy to find and play with friends and stuff, which is just a load of marketing crap.
It's BS, man.
I think there's probably legacy Oculus systems they want to get rid of. That's my thought of it. They just want to bring it into, you know, maybe a single sign-on style setup. So it does suck, though. Anyone that's current, you know, Oculus owner and hates Facebook, and obviously anyone that hates Facebook and doesn't own one yet, you know, it's going to affect them. But it's going to be interesting because ever since, you know, the whole thing with Palmer Luckey, and him getting, I guess, outed from the head of Oculus. I think they're when I say their stock, not their actual stock, but like their stock in the mind of gamers and consumers has dropped considerably since then. So will be interesting to see if people even care about it, or are they just an afterthought at this point?
Yeah, and you know, you got to be really careful where you're positioned in the market. If you're just kind of middle of the road, you know, not really blowing anyone away, not really the cheapest option or a reasonable price option, I do think you put yourself massively at risk. So PSVR is by far, even further than the Virtual Boy, by far the most popular VR platform that's ever existed.
More than the Virtual Boy? Really?
Yeah. It's actually, I think I know the numbers off the top of my head. I think it's about 5 million units from memory, and I think it's maybe 500,000 units for the Virtual Boy. So there you go. It's 10 times more popular right there. But and I'm amazed it's not more than that, to be honest. But you know, I think people just wanting to get into VR, like on a base level, PSVR, and then when PSVR 2, which almost seems certainty to happen because they've almost referred to it, when that comes along, and if that is like a big step up, you know, basically, you know, playing almost like a 1080p almost versions of the games on much more powerful hardware, better refresh rates. I just don't get where Oculus stands then, because to your point, it's like, you know, it's the standalone versus the PC version. Because if you want to have the top end, you wouldn't go Oculus. You'd definitely go Valve Index. And when they get the production sorted, that's where you'd go. And if you want a more like streamlined version, a more, reasonable price, you probably would go PSVR, or most people would go PSVR. So, yeah, I just don't get it. And, all this stuff about, they need to do it for tech reasons or whatever, it's just total BS. Facebook doesn't really have a big line into the gaming market, like the whole streaming market. They've tried to do it multiple times with Facebook Gaming and really kind of have failed so far. And, they care about eyeballs, and eyeballs are going to streaming, and it's growing rapidly. It's one of the biggest segments in that demo they really care about. So I think they want a foothold in it, and they're forcing people to go across to it, starting from October for new owners. And like I said, this has now just put a line through Oculus for me. Like, I have zero interest in anything that Oculus does from this point on now. Because there's no way I'll get something that forces me to have a Facebook account just to play a game. Like, it's just crazy to me. So yeah, no, it's going to be interesting, and Zuckerberg's, mission to run the world. So we'll see how that goes. And then going on to another monolith, not quite the monolith we're about to talk about, but Microsoft.
Yeah, so just a very small thing I wanted to mention here. So at the start of the month, a whole bunch of Xbox 360 games that were previously delisted were actually relisted on the store. And there's a whole bunch of them, and they included like Tom Clancy's Hawks, Battlefield 2 Modern Combat, and I think the servers aren't even up for that game anymore, Dirt 3, Fuel, a whole bunch.
Oh.
And then they were subsequently undelisted. So obviously it was not underlisted, they were delisted again, I should say. So there was obviously a mistake here, but you had a whole bunch of people, especially in the achievements community, and I got wind of this because I frequent True Achievements all the time.
Yeah.
And so obviously they ran out and they purchased these games, and there was even some DLC that they purchased. And interestingly, Microsoft has then refunded them for a lot of these games and revoked the licenses, which 100% makes sense, right? If you've accidentally relisted games you didn't have the rights to sell.
Can I just clarify? So when you say revoked, does that mean you've bought it, they've got it on their console, they're playing it, and then they actually pulled it from your console?
So essentially, if you tried to load the game up and you're connected to the internet, the game will not work. And
really?
Now, from that point onwards, I believe
just for the people that bought it like that.
Yeah. So essentially, they have removed the digital license of the game, because these were digital games, right? So it's not like we're talking physical discs or anything. So basically, they've refunded them and revoked the licenses, which I understand why, because they didn't have the rights to actually relist these games, especially some of the ones that were probably delisted because of music licensing reasons and things like that. But what I kind of wanted to, I guess, bring this up was at some point I'd really like to have a bit of a deep dive with you about the whole concept of game ownership and where that sits as we move closer to an all digital and streaming future, because at that point, and it's all in their T's and C's, which majority, 99.9% of people don't read. The fact that you no longer own these games. So I think we'll figure out when it makes sense to have a bit of a special feature where we dive into that. Because I think there's positives and negatives about the whole thing. And obviously for these people, some of the people, if they leave their console offline, they're able to play them again. But as soon as they take them online, then essentially they're out of luck. So
yeah, because I think in this case it is fair, because it's sort of like, we've sold you something we didn't actually legally have the right to sell, and we've made a mistake. It's our error. So we're going to remove it from your account and refund you all the money. Don't worry. I do wonder if the achievements still stick. I guess they would.
I imagine they would. I don't think there's any...
Come on, you're the achievement expert here.
No, that's what I'm saying. I imagine they would. I don't think there's any situation where achievements have ever been retroactively removed from an account. So I don't think they would do that.
And I am super keen to talk about this. I actually was thinking earlier this week that we should talk about this at some stage. The whole, digital versus physical, and then the rights. and just the direction the industry's going with that stuff. So I think let's get it done. Let's revisit it later because I'm really keen. And I think it's also probably our views from what I've seen are probably actually pretty contrary to to a lot of other people on it. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting chat about that.
So you mentioned Monolith. Now let's talk about the actual Monolith.
Yes.
The most important one.
Yes.
The Melbourne Monolith. Oh man, I love this. It's
going to be famous.
I love this so much.
Don't patch it out. Don't patch it out.
Okay, so Microsoft Flight Simulator, which launched this week, obviously probably the biggest release in a while, I'd say, and currently features a gigantic monolith in Melbourne's northern suburbs. And I just love that one of the biggest releases of the week is so connected to Melbourne, which it's obviously a place in Australia very close to both of our hearts. That's where I currently live and where you used to live. And
was born, grew up. Yep.
Yeah, and this monolith it's certainly noticeable. It's gigantic. It's like it's a skyscraper, but ridiculous.
Our friend spoke about it. And I should thank. So we have a clip show on YouTube, Connor O'Kane. So we've used his video and we've credited him, who actually landed on the monolith.
Oh, it's amazing, and it's such a well edited video. So credit to him.
Check it out.
I think he's got a game on the VR and Steam store as well. So I don't know if it's any good or not.
Yeah, check out the game. Yeah.
So. Yeah, apparently the developer Sobo Games, obviously alongside Microsoft Studios, apparently used OpenStreetMap for a bunch of building data. And at the time, apparently, when they download that data, that particular house in North Melbourne or Faulkner or whatnot, and they apparently was listed, instead of being listed as a 2-floor building, was listed as 212 floors. So then it's basically replicated 212 floors in the game. It's amazing. This is probably my favorite news story of the last few weeks, I reckon. It's just the video, just watch the video of it. Oh my God, I love it.
It's so good. And it's one of I know that they'll patch it out. They're going to patch it out.
Oh, of course they will patch it out.
But I wish, please Microsoft, because there's so much good buzz about this game. My family won't listen to this podcast, but I've been deliberating big time because my dad always wanted to know how to fly. I've, as a gift, given him flying lessons and stuff like that. But I think he's kind of at an age and his health and everything like that, he won't be able to get a pilot license. And I was so thinking through the logic of what I can do here of how can I get him to play this game? Because I think he'd love it. And this game has got such positive buzz. I was actually shocked because I didn't know that this game isn't available anything other than PC. Is it coming out on any other consoles? Xbox Series X or...
So I think they've mentioned it's a possibility in the future. But
why isn't it a launch title? What the hell? I feel like this would be massive as a launch title.
But we don't know. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't.
So that would be big. That would be big.
I do have to call out, though, as much as this game's got a lot of credit, the way they handled the launch was very, very rough and frustrated a lot of people, including myself and some good
What was your
friends of ours.
experience?
So basically, you install a launcher, which is 1 gig, right? Then basically,
why is the launcher so big?
Well, it's got to power that 10-second music loop. So basically, you install the launcher, and then come release day, it says there's a content update, which is 95 gig or something, right? Which is not small, but the problem is
it's not small.
No, but
95 gig.
But in current day, especially on PC, that's not that. There's other games like that, right?
That's pretty big, dude. That's pretty big.
Yeah, look at Call of Duty. That's at this point 150, 160 gigs. So.
Yeah, but that wasn't launched. That was an update to the game, right?
Anyway, that's beside the amount is not what I'm talking about, right? The frustration is the fact that I left this overnight. I've got a pretty good internet connection, especially in Australia.
Well, I think you probably have a top 0.1% internet connection in Australia.
And it managed to download one gig.
It failed,
8 hours. So basically, and I'm not the only one. So many other people are having issues. So they really royally screwed it up. But it got better. I was able to install it eventually. But the problem is that you had to leave it was it was downloaded within the launcher, so you had to leave it open and running, and it just absolutely just thrashed your video card just on the installer.
But why?
I don't know. It's ridiculous. And not only that, unless you went to the volume settings and turned down the volume for that specific app, it played the same 10-second loop over and over again. It was just,
which most people don't know how to turn down. There's a special kind of app volume settings.
Some guy on YouTube showed me, and I'm like, oh, thank God, I can turn that down. So, yeah, good on them for making the Monolith mistake, but yeah, the way that the launch was handled was very rough. So. Yeah,
massively. And I don't know, I don't get too worked up about those things normally because it's kind of operational stuff. They stuff it up all the time. It is what it is. What can you do? But this whole Melbourne Monolith thing, I desperately hope they have a cheat code or a setting or something in the game to retain it. That to me would just be amazing. If you're able to type in Melbourne or something and it turns it back on. Just for
there'll be
Easter egg.
There'll be mods, at some point. So,
and just to be clear to everyone, the tallest tower in Melbourne, from memory, Eureka Tower. I think that's 88 floors from memory, or that kind of order. So having a 212 floor skyscraper monolith, punctuated in the north of Melbourne, it just looks insane. It's just so awesome. I love it. I love it so much. I hope they keep it. And let's get into the bargain bin. So as we always do, start off with the Epic Game Store because they're very consistent with giving us some free games. So the free games this week, Enter the Gungeon, God's Trigger, and 3 out of 10 Episode 3. So that's a continuation from Episode 1 and 2. Enter the Gungeon, I love this game. I gush about this game. You have it on Xbox Game Pass. Now you've got it free on PC. Please play it. I want to hear your thoughts on it. And then next week, Hitman is coming out. And also Hitman 3 has been confirmed. It's going to be an exclusive on the Epic Game Store next year. Another reason why people will hate Epic. And then finally, Shadowrun Collection is also free next week. So, geez, man, the hits keep on coming with the Epic Game Store.
Yeah, I'm super interested in trying Shadowrun. I've just looked up what's in the collection. I kind of wish they had the port of the SNES Shadowrun in there as well. That'd be cool. It's not.
Well, that was developed from memory from an Australian developer as well.
Well, there you go.
So, yeah, they're usually quite generous, Epic, when they do have these collections for free. Because people are a bit like, oh, are they going to, give away one game or just a trilogy and all this other kind of stuff? And it's no, they just go nuts and give away everything that that's been ported to PC. So, when they did the Batman games, they ended up giving away, Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight, and then also the Lego Batman trilogy. It was just nuts all in 1 week. So, yeah, no, I'm going to be interested to see what games are on there as well. And moving to Nintendo Switch. So normally we don't have any Nintendo Switch sales, and Swinny did sort of go through his picks, but we finally do have that sale that we flagged a little bit earlier. So we have the winter sale. So this sale ends August 30. And, all of these games that we are going to talk about are at their lowest price ever. And I should just call out, we'll go through some games that are under $5, $10, $20, and then just some other games that are out that are first party or of interest. So first one is Tokitori 2 Plus. So this is massively on sale. It's $2.25. I've bought this game. It's a bit of a Metroidvania. There's a really cool video on Game Maker's Toolkit that is around this game, and it's kind of this idea that this game, you can do everything in this game from the start, but you kind of learn the mechanics through the game, and then you could play it again and actually sort of get to the end, which is kind of cool. So this is a really well regarded game, and it's dirt cheap, and that's the under $5 game. The under $10 game, Enter the Gungeon. Yes, it is free on PC. Not everyone has a PC, and it is on sale this week, so 50% off. So it's $8.75. The next game, and I thought this is quite topical, and this is under $20, Golf Story. So this is the lowest price it's ever been. It's $11.25. Fantastic game. And unfortunately, Sports Story is on sale, is delayed. So this will have to sort of fill your RPG, sports, sim, arcadey sort of vibes until you're happy for next year. The next one is Fitness Boxing, and why I included this is, and this is like under $50, so this is $48.95, is fitness boxing. A lot of people rave about this game, and I think Ring Fit is probably the one game you'd want to get if you want a fitness style game on the Switch. But, you know, if you can't, and this is a digital game, you know, a lot of people that I know who have this love this game. So fitness boxing, look at that if you want to pick up something while you're in isolation to keep yourself fit. And then finally, I just wanted to mention all the first party games, the key ones that are on sale. There's some more, but probably these are the big ones that I want to mention. They're all $53.30. You know, not the best price ever, but these are the best price they've ever been on this platform. And Nintendo doesn't often put their games on sale, so I always want to call them out. So Luigi's Mansion 3, Yoshi's Crafted World, and Splatoon 2. And especially with Splatoon 2, I think it's good to have it digitally. So, you know, again, you know, having these first party games for cheap is pretty cool. So it's nice to see a sale back on the Switch finally. And now over to Xbox.
Yeah, so it's actually a pretty big week of announcements. Or some of these were previously announced, but a big update for Xbox Game Pass with 13 new games being added, or some in
Which
now.
Which is nuts.
Yeah,
and some new games, like brand new games.
Yeah, so available right now, we mentioned Microsoft Flight Simulator, so that's just on PC.
Which is crazy value. Crazy value. That's like $100 game in Australia, and it's like a part of the Game Pass. And you'd imagine probably always would be a part of Game Pass.
Yeah, because of the whole Microsoft, you know, published games always being Game Pass, it's kind of like it. We knew that it was obviously going to be in Game Pass because anything that they publish is. So, but that's cool. You also had on PC Crossing Souls and Darksiders Genesis, which is great. On Xbox and PC right now, you can get Spiritfarer, which was in the Nintendo Indie World as well. Yeah. Battletoads, which I'll be giving my impressions soon. Don't Starve Giant Edition. New Super Lucky's Tale, Hypnospace Outlaw, and Tell Me Why Chapter 1, which was in the Xbox Game Showcase. You know, was it our first episode or our second episode? I can't remember.
I think it might have been the first.
Yeah. So coming on August 28th, you have Double Kick Heroes on Xbox and PC, and a big one, Wasteland 3, Xbox and PC. So I'm keen to try that out once I know that it's not broken, because the version of Wasteland 2 on the Windows Store I purchased for $60 and it was broken. So I'm a little burnt by them, but hopefully it's not the case. On September the 1st, PC is also getting Crusader Kings 3, and probably the biggest game in this whole thing, other than possibly Flight Simulator, on the 3rd of September, Game Pass is getting Resident Evil 7 on Xbox and PC. So that's great.
So good. Yeah, like, you know, I saw this really, interesting deal, let's just say, on how to get Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. I think that's what it's called. So that's the PC, console, Xbox Live, everything, for about $100 Australian for 3 years. And I was like so close to pulling the trigger, even though I don't have an Xbox, so it'd just be for PC. I'm like right on the threshold of getting onto the whole Xbox Game Pass thing. And then, you know, and this is the thing, it's kind of interesting. Then it actually made me go, oh, maybe I should get an Xbox as well if I get this Game Pass thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the strategy, right? Like you said it, I think 2 episodes or 3 episodes ago, and the whole Tell Me Why thing, that was from episode 2, by the way. But yeah, like, you know, they really are service led, and it gets you interested in it from that perspective. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'll just get the whole ecosystem now that I'm on that.
The one thing to remember, though, if you're the kind of person that purchases games and leave them for a rainy day, it doesn't work that way, except for obviously the Microsoft games. So, you know, they these titles do leave. You know, there's a whole bunch of games that I've played and beaten, and they're no longer on the Game Pass. So it does kind of change your approach a bit, especially if it's a game that's not published by Microsoft. You're going to want to play them right away, especially if it's a game that you think is going to take you a good 50 hours to beat.
Yeah, and I think that's where I struggle because, and you know, so like I did not give you warning of this, but you know, I was so close to pulling the trigger. I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to look through every single game that's on Xbox Game Pass and then go, is this actually, should I get this or not, right? And I was like, hey, wait, I thought Red Dead Redemption 2 was on it. And I went through the whole list and I didn't see Red Dead Redemption 2. Am I wrong? Is that still on it?
I'm not sure. If it may have been removed since. So,
but was it on it?
I'm not sure because
Oh, okay.
I seem to recall that being an announcement at some point. But I mean,
Yeah.
games that stay on for 3 months and then will
Oh,
leave. So,
okay. No, so it did come on it, and then it left.
yeah. So that's just the
So it came
nature
on
of
in May and then left on September.
Yeah, that's still a decent chunk of time if you wanted to play the game, though. So
This is not for me. This is not for me. So this is like the thing. I'm like terrible with the backlog. And just with the whole kids thing, it's just like
that's why.
sometimes
That's
I have
why I
more time,
mentioned it.
sometimes I don't.
That's why I went
Yeah,
out of my
you're
way
right.
to
You're
mention
right.
it. Is that
Yeah, no, you're
it's
right.
for people that tend to like acorns. Like you're a squirrel. I'm storing all these games for that rainy day. It's not. That's not the service. Like the service isn't like
Yeah.
that. But still, the value is still ridiculous. That
Oh yeah.
I have gotten value out of it just by not having to pay for instance, Crosscode. I would have
Yeah.
actually bought that game if I didn't have Game Pass, and I've probably already made my money just by playing that this month out of what I would have
Yeah.
spent like $30 normally. So
Yeah, you definitely, I'd say more than anyone, you'd get your money's worth from this stuff because you're more of an Xbox gamer anyway. And, like the amount of value you'd get from just saving on Flight Simulator, maybe you'd never buy it, but, you get a lot of fun out of it, 95 gigabyte download. For you, that's small. That's nothing. Yeah, no, yeah, I'm really close to it. I think if I did have an Xbox, I'd definitely get it. So yeah, we'll see how the next gen plays out and which one I choose to get. And not that we're not throwing love to PlayStation, it's just for us there has to be something really interesting and not just the general sales that they have on PlayStation at the moment. So as they do have some really interesting sales there, we'll definitely highlight them as well. And I'm really keen to when the Game of the Year editions for some of the games that came out last year start to come out. So we'll definitely call that out. But as you did allude to, and I don't recognize the word impression, your Swinpression, Battletoads.
yeah, so originally I had a different game in here to give my Swinpressions for this week.
Yes, and I was looking forward to seeing that.
Which was Microsoft Flight Simulator. And then I realized that, hey, I actually need to learn how to do this to actually play this game a bit better.
It's a sim. It's a proper sim.
I
It's
know,
almost not a game.
but I didn't feel like me detailing my one attempt at taking off from Tullamarine to fly to Point Cook and then just landing on the grass outside Tullamarine was a great impression to give our listeners. So what I actually said was, you know what, I'm gonna download Battletoads. It just came out. I'm gonna give it a shot. And
Given that you love the franchise as we spoke about last week,
the good old Monopoly, of the video game world. So, and the thing with Battletoads is not only does it have not a lot of buzz about it, but the trailers have not sold a lot of people on the game. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to try this and see what I thought. And I got to say, the game's not bad. The game's actually pretty decent.
I love your glowing reviews. The game's not bad.
No, it's actually pretty decent. I actually think so far this game is definitely a way better game than the NES Battletoads, in my opinion. That's not.
Can I just jump in?
Yes.
Right? And I've got an interesting question. I know, I'm ruining your vibe on this, but
don't you have a baby to go look after? Let me do my impressions.
Do you think that this will become a cult classic in the exact same way almost as the original did?
No, but I mean, not that many games become cult classics from major publishers these days, I think, So, like, something like Stardew is an example, I think, of it going from a cult classic to obviously a mainstream hit. But
like, no one is playing this game, dude. No one is playing this game.
Well, no one's talking about this game. Doesn't mean no one's playing it. So I think there's a difference there. There's no buzz about it. That's to be certain. But I don't think the game was meant to be a buzz kind of game. It was just meant to be, hey, here's a love letter to the community. We put out a new Battletoads game. Stop asking us for it. So, But basically, okay, so I've only played probably about the first third of the game, potentially. It's hard to tell with this game because I believe it's not super long, but you wouldn't want this game to be super long either. I gotta say, we talked about, brawlers, modern day beat 'em ups, and how it's kind of, they're hard to find a place with modern game design. The Streets of Rage 4 might be an exception, and Scott Pilgrim might be an exception, Castle Crashers and that. I gotta say, my least liked part of this game is the brawler segments, but they're well made.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're well
Oh, no.
made. But the problem is that, not the problem, but there's a lot to this game. So this game has so many different like mixes of genres, and between each level you do different things. And I actually think it actually works quite well, because that's kind of what Battletoads has always been, at least the original game. And their approach to, so on the second stage, you're essentially doing like the Turbo Tunnel style level, and I believe there's one later anyway as well. That's actually handled really well. I actually thought that was really, really good. I had a blast doing that level, and I'd like to play that on the hardest difficulty, because I think it's even faster. And that was really, really good. I'm actually having a lot of fun with it. I don't think especially at the start, I don't think the humor hits at all. It's got a really cool concept, and they play it up. It's very it's all about self-deprecation and things like that. They're making fun of Battletoads and the fact that they haven't been around for 25 years, and then work it into the storyline. But it does get better. So I found that the jokes start landing a lot more as you kind of get used to it. And there are times when it did actually make me laugh. So I think that it is a little try hard at the start. But I recommend, anyone that was interested in Battletoads but maybe thought the game was, had a lot of poor design choices, maybe give this a shot. You might actually enjoy it a lot more than the original. But it definitely obviously doesn't have the character of the original. I think the visual design of the NES game, to me, is just much more appealing than the newer visual design. So I'm going to give it a bit more of a try. It's got some cool mechanics in it, but yeah, I'd say the brawling is well done, but it's just not for me. I think that's the reason why I don't enjoy those levels as much. It's just I'm just kind of moved on from that kind of genre. Since the SNES days, it's probably the last time I enjoyed beat 'em ups was on the SNES. So yeah, I'm keen to play more. I actually think it's a pretty decent game.
Like one of the other genres that reminds me of beat 'em ups is shmups, so shoot 'em ups, where and I think we're both big fans of shmups, and probably Ikaruga. Wait, I'm not saying that right, am I? Ikaruga. Yeah. Ikaruga. Is probably the last one that I really loved. Did that come out on the Game Boy? GameCube initially? I know it was in arcades.
Yeah, it was on GameCube, Dreamcast, and obviously got ports to 360, and I imagine PS3. And it may even be on Switch, I'm not sure.
It is on Switch. I own it on Switch. Yeah. I actually also have the Tate mode, dock for the Switch. So I actually played it a lot on that as well. I love that game. But it does kind of remind me of that type of genre where it's sort of not falling out of favor of, I don't know if that's the right way to say it. It's just not one that people absolutely love anymore.
Well, did you know that Battletoads also has bullet hell levels?
Yeah, I've seen it. So, in I was just looking through the gameplay footage, like someone just playing through the whole game. It's an interesting one. I feel like this game is almost guaranteed to come out on the Switch and other platforms, because it's got no buzz about it, and it feels like if they want to get their money back or any investment from this game, they're gonna have to put it on other platforms, because doesn't seem to be like a system seller, let's just say.
But I don't think it was meant to be. I mean, this wasn't probably a huge high-budget game anyway. I think I could see it on the Switch. I don't think you can see it on any other platform. I mean, it is still a Microsoft title. You don't think you can see it on PC? Is it on PC? It's already on PC.
Ah, okay, sorry, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know if it's on Steam, but it's at least on the Windows Store. So.
I think you're right. So I think it would be only Switch. I don't see this at all going on PlayStation like Cuphead recently has. Because I think that's a bit different, because that's such a seminal game. Yeah,
but Cuphead also, at the time, the rights to Cuphead weren't completely owned by Microsoft, were they?
No, but they had so much investment. It was basically committed as a timed exclusive that they themselves said it would never be on PlayStation. And then, that certainly wasn't the case in the end.
But I think that's fair enough. This is a Microsoft IP, so it's kind of different in that sense, I think. It's like a wholly owned IP. I agree. So.
Agree. And I think, just naturally, because Battletoads, I feel like everything from Rare has a more natural audience with Nintendo anyway. And like that audience. So, anything that gets released, like if they did put Rare Replay onto Nintendo, I think that would just sell disgustingly, like the numbers.
I'm shocked that they haven't done it already, but I will also clarify that I believe the majority of development for this particular game was from the Lala Studios, I believe. But obviously, it's a rare IP. Like it's just like. Yeah, like, it's so ingrained in Rare's history that this honestly is probably one of the games that really put them on the map back in the day and got them to Nintendo to start working with them even closer. So
yeah, definitely. And we haven't spoken about this beforehand, but wrapping up your Swinpressions, would you just say that people should go buy this game, or is this a sort of game that you should only play if you have free access to it through Game Pass?
I think this game would actually be a decent purchase but for very specific situations. So first of all, if you've got someone that loves to play co-op games with you, because it's got co-op, but it's only local co-op. And apparently the way that the co-op is implemented is actually pretty cool. Like even in bullet hell stages, I think different characters do different things. So I think first of all, if you've got someone that loves co-op, and also if you are interested in Battletoads, I think those two things combined make it worth, a purchase. But at that point, you might as well just get a month of Game Pass to play it, because then you can also play other games.
Yeah, the replay value of this game may not be very high, because it seems to be you can get through it in about 2 to 3 hours, which is normal for like a predominantly beat 'em up kind of game.
Yeah, there are some like collectibles and stuff, and there's scoring things, so there's definitely reasons to replay the game. But compared to obviously a lot of other modern games, you're not gonna, it's not like a Rocket League or anything where you're gonna get hundreds of hours out of it. So.
Yeah, and it probably doesn't seem to be the quality level where, how like Super Metroid, I go back and beat that game all the time. So because it's such a great game, you really love going through the whole thing. Whereas it probably doesn't seem like this game has reached that threshold. And it probably doesn't have the budget for it, to be fair, as well.
Yeah, no, it's decent. I think it's much better than I expected. So good on them.
Nice. Thank you for your Swinpressions. Well, that wraps us up for this week's episode of Big Week in Gaming. As always, make sure you feel free to reach out to us either on our YouTube channel, so just search for Big Week in Gaming, or directly on Twitter at BigWigPod. And we'd love to sort of have the conversation. There's been a lot of debate around certain things in Australia that maybe can be a future topic down the track around, is Nintendo the biggest platform in the 90s or not? There was a lot of different opinions on that, which I thought was quite interesting. And then also, if you really want to help our podcast grow, make sure you give a 5-star review or a thumbs up, or share it with your friends, because that would be the best way for us to grow. And with that, bye-bye.
See ya.